stock market is for everybody. It's a publicly traded market. So like just how you go in, you buy your stock, you take it out, it's public. You're investing in public companies. So I think that it's for everybody, and you have to remember that.
Yeah, ayy, the market hustle, helping you to succeed, teaching like nobody else. Financial empowerment, giving you strategies for generational wealth, so you can start helping yourself. More money for you to be getting. This the moment for you to be winning and be living financially independent.
Market Hustle community, welcome to episode 36. For those of you who are new, my name is Josh. I'm the guy behind the Market Hustle. And for those of you who are returning back to another great episode, welcome back. It's great to have you back here. Today, we're going to be bringing on one of our special guests. We have a special guest from the Market Hustle community. He's actually been a loyal follower. He's been following the page for years. I've been talking with him close to when I started the page to begin with. His name's Fernando. He's from Florida. So we're going to be bringing him on a little bit. Before I do that, I want to, of course, welcome back our co-host. Pierce is unfortunately not able to make it to this episode. He will be back at the next episode. I'm actually currently in Phoenix, Arizona for a couple of days. This is my first time recording the podcast outside of like my home state. So it kind of feels a little weird. Had to get the setup all going earlier today to make sure we're ready to roll for this podcast. But as we said in the last podcast, we're not missing a single episode this year. Like we're going hard at this, podcast. We're in full grow mode. So we're really excited to continue to bring out these episodes on the regular. And it's all thanks to everybody who is in this community, eager to learn, eager to ask questions. And of course, thanks to people like Fernando, eager to come on and share their stories. So that being said, enough about that. Bafi, how's everything going in New Jersey, man?
Everything is good, man. No complaints here. I'm really looking forward to getting to know Fernando a bit and just kind of hear his story out, see where he's at in life and what's kind of going on under the hood, right? I'm really looking forward to this. But everything is good here. Can't complain. It's almost Friday. So I'm looking forward to that and looking forward to the weekend. It's one of my buddy's birthdays. So happy early birthday to my boy James, aka Jigga. But yeah, very excited. I feel like I think the beautiful thing about having the special guests on is we also get to actually be audience. You know what I mean? Instead of us just doing all the talking and the teaching, we get to learn and just connect with like-minded folks like Fernando, who's gonna introduce himself shortly. So I'm ready to go, man. This is a good one.
Great to have you back, man. And yeah, I completely agree with that. It's always nice to have people come on, sharing their stories, just so not only to help other people in the community learn, and I'm sure there's going to be several people who can relate to Fernando in one way or another, but also just for Bafi and I, like we also get to ask questions. We get to learn, just how people see things differently, maybe how they approach investing or finances differently. So it's always a learning experience for us as well, which is also a great part of this podcast. That being said, let's waste no more time. Fernando, welcome to the Market Hustle
Thank
podcast.
you.
It's so great to have you. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I was out of town for some time, but out of town for me is like going to Tampa and that's it and back. So pretty close. I'm from Florida. I've actually been in Florida all my life. And yeah, everything's good on my side. I'm really excited for this. And I really thank you guys for letting me join and kind of give your audience and or our audience a good sneak peek as to that millennial point of view. I consider myself a millennial. I guess that's a label, but at the same time, it's kind of just like that middle age part where, we grew into the internet, we grew into new technologies, and we grew into not knowing a lot of the financial literacy that many folks know, right? There many folks with a lot of wealth, many folks with access to top colleges, top universities, and being able to get that extra knowledge by paying for it, right? So definitely not don't want to go straight into the weeds, but that's kind of like my point of view, right? Just a regular guy, a chill guy, kind of what many people in the internet that meme going around.
Yeah.
Um,
I love
yeah,
it.
just a chill guy, just trying to retire early. I'll say that.
That's awesome, man. And I completely agree with you that the millennial, like the younger generation specifically, like even Gen X or
Yeah.
Gen Z, like we're at such a unique advantage having all of these resources and tools right at our fingertips. Of course, like there's downsides to social media, like it's not all great, but there's also a lot of great resources and information out there on the internet. And if you're intentional with how you approach it all, it really just the sky's the limit, right? And what you can learn when it comes to money management skills, when it comes to just learning about this great thing called the stock market, there's a lot of information out there that wasn't accessible to earlier or older generations. Like the older generations, they kind of had to take much more of the trial and error approach. There's a lot. It was a lot more difficult to learn about, budgeting, money management skills, or even just investing in the stock markets back in 1980 or the 1970s. Like they had to go like maybe they could read some books that potentially could make things a little bit easier to understand. But I really like that you're highlighting that, Fernando. It's like we're at such a unique advantage, especially the millennials and Gen Z is, we have these resources right at our fingertips, and there's really no
Yep,
excuse to not use those and maximize them to our advantage. But I'm curious,
absolutely.
Bob, do you have anything
Absolutely.
to add as well?
Yeah, I think an interesting perspective as Fernando was just sharing a bit more about that was, we are actually the group, like right, the millennials and then everybody after us, we're the group that had a front row seat at the theater in watching our parents and the adults struggle, right? And so there are things that maybe we can't relate to certain things, but we've noticed what life really looks like out there, right? And
Yeah.
the impact of what our parents and our older generations and our families are experiencing, whether it is physical pain, right? Whether it's some of the emotional and mental challenges that they dealt with in the workforce that they just never really got time to prioritize because they had to put food on the table. They have to take their family back home in other countries or, in their community. And so we witnessed that and we recognize like, okay, hard work is important. It's important to put in effort. We have to earn it, right? Nobody's just going to give you what you think you deserve and want. But we know the type of life we want to see and live and experience and the type of families we want to bring in the world based on witnessing what we've seen our parents endure and the impact it's had on us. I think that's I would say one of the bubbles that millennials are very, very conscious of. And I think as a whole in a group, we get a lot of flack, but I think we're doing our best and trying to really usher in a new era of life. And I think people like Josh, Fernando, myself, peers, and the like-minded in these communities is gonna make a huge difference if it already hasn't had immense impact. So it's definitely exciting to kind of recognize that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that I mean our parents or our like predecessors, they want to see us succeed. And I know that
Yeah.
what you mentioned is true, right, Buffy? It makes a lot of sense that there was more physical work done in those times. Since now things are being automated, things are being more accessible. Like you can do so much from just your phone, you can do so much from just a computer, and they put more work into it, right? It was harder work. And when they look at us, they see like, okay, well, they're doing the right thing,
Yeah.
but how the heck are they doing so much? Just
How are you working from home?
Right, right. Like how the heck? I mean, I had to go out, and drive and all these things, and then you're just working from home and doing so well. So it's different. But we have to remember that we are in the same place they were before, right? So we have to remember that keeping ourselves sharp, with self-development, self-knowledge, and learning every day will prevent you from being shocked by the world moving so quickly.
That's a good point, especially as we move into this new AI world where
Mhm.
it's very easy to like demonize technological advancements. In a way, especially the millennial group, like we're kind of starting to find our ways, maybe kind of saying the same things that our parents said when we were looking at the internet for the first
Yep.
time as youngsters, you know?
For sure. We're
Yeah, it's
officially
like
old, man.
Like
We're
a full
officially
circle,
old.
man.
I have a story around that. I think just today, I was driving home, and I went through like I passed the high school, and I remember walking with my friends when I went to high school. I walked to my house, and I would walk and sweat, and just it was a long walk. Now every single person that came out of the high school or a kid was driving a scooter, electric scooters. So we were just zooping like everywhere, and I'm like, man, things have definitely changed, and it made me feel a little bit old. But at the same time, it's like what I was telling you, right? Like things are moving so quickly that just closing your eyes and seeing tomorrow, you'll see so much change, and then you have to kind of just stay up to it. And it's just for the audience, right? Like always being sharp, you know, if you like to listen to books, listen to a book and kind of just retain that. And I mean, when I think of retaining information, because it's such an important word, right? Retaining information, because you can listen, you can see books, you can read them, but if you're not retaining it, then you're not really doing much with that, right? It's like those AI computers, right? They're putting in all this information into it, but how do they automate it? How do they make it work? So that's the part where I think many times people during the day they have a certain time, and I think you guys probably know your time of your day, which you're just the sharpest and retaining the most information. And many people should like look into that. Trying to see like what's the time of the day that I take the most information in and I take it with me to the future, like to the next day. So that's definitely a good point, right? To grow on that, right?
Yeah, well, even just what I've been doing for myself is like I've kind of fallen in the trap in the past where like you start to just become this information machine where you're just trying to gather as much information as you can. But we also have to realize that like our time is limited by just the nature of time itself, right? So like it's more important to find the right information that you can actually use to your advantage, like to apply to your life directly right now with the problems you're currently facing in your individual situation. So like that's like been a game changer is when I try to like find books or even just podcasts I want to listen to, like I try to have intention behind those resources or that information because I want to make sure I can apply it in some way rather than just sitting there absorbing information for information's sake. And I think that's a very important thing to call out, especially as we enter this world where information is so abundant. Like there's information everywhere, and you could argue that there's too much information. Like it's very easy to get analysis paralysis, like just shifting or trying to swift through all this information out there, especially in the stock market world, like in the investing world. There's a lot of information, and 90% of it's bullshit, or distractions. So like being able to find the 10% that actually matters that you can actually use to have an action, like you can take action on that information, like that's much more important. And I would argue it's definitely a skill that you kind of have to learn or kind of tweak in your own life, like as you kind of go throughout your investing journey or your career or whatever it is like you get better at like finding the right information, the information that you need that can actually move things forward. But that being said, Fernando, I'm curious, like, why don't you share a little bit about like your early journey with money management, or maybe just kind of what got you interested with the stock market in general, or maybe just a little bit more context as well of like how long you've been investing and like your experience with investing as well.
Yeah, I think well, I started pretty early, and I think that's around the time where and just the age itself makes you feel like, I mean, I was like around 2019 or so. Just the age itself makes you feel eager to get out in the world and learn something, but it makes you also eager to make quick money. You try to find, like you're trying to find yourself in a way as to like, what am I here for and what's my purpose, but also how do I make a lot of money? How do I, invest? How do I grow and not just become somebody that just works a job every day and just limited to that certain amount of money that that job gives them. So I think one of my first job was what, Burger King, and I remember just working that job. It was a high school job. Then I went into being 18 or 19 or so, and I just kind of just thought like, how do I get like how do I get out of this box in a way, right? Like how do I not become somebody that just lives here or stays in this same place for that long? And how do I make quick money? How do I learn? Like and one thing that stood out for me was at that time there was different applications and different like sources. Like there was like Betterment or Morning Brew and all these things they will offer like all this information, but they always ask for money. It was like, okay, well, we're going to give you a morning update on the stock market, but this is how much it is, right? And I honestly, all I did was just invest in that. I think that I didn't feel ready to take the risk. Even so, I couldn't take the risk just working at Burger King because I didn't have capital. You don't have money to invest in, and if you do, you can easily get burned by the stock market. It could be $100 and you go in there, you try it out, and then boom, you lost your $100. And then you're kind of just burned out of it. Like, okay, what did I do wrong? What do I need to know? Or you can just walk away. A lot of people walk away from the stock market because they get burned. But that was kind of my journey. Yeah, I started just a regular job, and I remember thinking bigger as to like what's it going to be for my 20s, right? I saw a lot of people being successful. Now it's crazy how there's 20-year-olds are being successful at 21 now, which is awesome. Good for them. I think that it's just what keeps you constant is keeping the knowledge going, right? And I think what I did was I invested in myself. I immediately started looking into those applications. I started looking into the stock market. I just wanted to kind of just better myself, and then I made different moves in the corporate world. So I started working other jobs, corporate jobs, technical like tech oriented jobs, and then I stayed constant. Now, when you do that, you have to think as to like consistency. It's kind of like compounding. Like if you stay consistent, you compound, and that's kind of like it relates to each other. So what I did was I stayed in that job. The next job was like I worked for a telecom company, and then I started just selling cell phones. And then sales kind of opened my eyes as to like potential of getting more for your hard work, right? Because you get commissions, you get incentives, you get different things like that. And when you look at it, you compare it to the stock market, it's kind of the same thing. You put a lot of work into it, you put a lot of risk, and then you get reward. But it is a little bit different because the stock market is you have to learn it more. You have to know that sometimes they can burn you, or sometimes they can just go sideways, and you don't know it's coming, right? But I stayed in this job for that long, and what I mean by this is like sometimes if you're younger, find something you like to do. Find something that will pay you commission. I've always been like an advocate of something that pays you commission because like you want to find something like in sales or something that pays you a little bit more for your hard work than just the regular just 1 hour like rate. I think that I've always been a true believer of that. Like I think I met a couple of like young guys here where I live, and I just tell them like, look, find a sales job. Find a sales job. It's going to teach you so much, and it's also going to motivate you to get hungry and want to sell more. When you look at it, sales jobs like you sell something, you're selling yourself as well, but at the same time, you're getting this high reward back for all your hard work. But essentially, that's kind of like part of my journey. Then I went into more of the technical side. I went to I did the corporate job for 8 years, and then I moved into like higher corporate jobs. I kind of did the corporate ladder, if that makes sense. And now I'm still in a corporate job. But now how I see it is it gives me the flexibility because I already know what I'm doing, and it's sales still, tech sales. But when I look at it, I kind of just animated it in a way because it's something natural that comes. But at the same time, I complement it with the stock market, and I am a day trader, so I do 10 to 15 trades a day. It's kind of considered like high frequency. What I do is I kind of just like see profit, close, see profit, close, and it's just like I automated it. So I created an AI bot for that, and it's kind of just like kind of just gives me indicators as to when to sell, when to not sell. So that's been kind of where I'm at right now in my journey, and I think it's going very well. I think I can definitely compare to retiring probably anytime soon in the next 5 years.
Amazing. Amazing. I think Fernando, I think that's such an interesting story because many of us can probably relate or have a somewhat of a similar synonym journey in our own personal lives, right? Um, and like your story reminds me of my own as well. And so shout out first and foremost, shout out to Burger King and McDonald's because they double-handedly have provided millennials an opportunity to learn about the real world very, very early on, right? Because most of us were in high school or in college, we needed a little pocket money because our we didn't have those resources, right? And so many of us first experience in the real world is really like those type of jobs. And my first job was at McDonald's, right? There's only one thing I liked about that job, which was just eating some fries and just grabbing some things in the back, right? But there were three things that really changed my mind and helped me usher my journey as well. And so, one, I smelled like fries every day. So did my room, right? Like my clothes, the that stench don't get out of your clothes, you know.
Right.
And then secondly, the pay wasn't great, but I wasn't looking for like great pay. I just needed a little pocket money, right? Hands on money, so I can just have a little something on me. And the third thing, which is really the biggest thing that changed my mind, is I started thinking, okay, I'm just a teenager just looking for a little pocket change, and that paycheck is not enough. But some families rely on the same paycheck to take
Mhm.
care of their entire family. And I'm like, if this money's not enough just for me, there's no way it's enough for people with real world responsibilities. So that shifted my entire mind a bit and kind of put me in a position where I was like, okay, I need to take life a little bit more serious, learn some information that can not just be beneficial for myself, but also help me contribute to the broader population and community. And I promised myself that I will figure it out and do whatever I have to do to never be in a certain position in life ever again. So I know many of us might be listening and you're going through some hardship, you're at a job or an environment that is not ideal, you don't feel valued, right? Or maybe you have great ideas that can help push the business forward, but you're not given the chance, or somebody's doing less work and they're benefiting more than you. Understand that some of these difficult experiences is actually what birth great opportunities for us to escape it. And I
Yeah.
think I just wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit, especially in this market right now. There's a lot of changes happening, a lot of shift. It's very competitive, and so I just encourage everybody to understand, like, even if you're in a difficult spot, it doesn't mean that it's always going to remain so, and it comes down to a little bit of ingenuity, grabbing life by the balls a little bit, and taking advantage of some of the things that Fernando just highlighted.
Yeah, and when you say that, like I think that what I was alluding to with the compounding effect is if you're gonna find something that pays you well, try to find ways to grow right within that. If it's at McDonald's or it's at a different job, I mean, of course, you want to grow out of that. You want at some point better yourself and get something new, but at the same time there's something that I learned, right? Like if you find something correct, you find something good, something that's paying you good, something you're learning from, I say give it time. Like it's the same to compounding. Like whenever you're investing in the stock market, if you want to go long, if you want to see reward, if you want to see returns, you have to be patient and stay there for long because it is going to compound. And the compound effect, I think it's my favorite book. Because when you read that book, you think like it's just slowly taking little nuggets over and over again, and it's going to add up at some point. I think that starting early, I think it's what's the topic of what I told you, Josh, right? Like starting early is the best thing you can do. Because if you start at your 20s and you're compounding it into an S&P 500 ETF or any other ETF that you believe in, that has a 10 or 12% per year return, you're already way ahead of the game than most of the other people because you're constantly investing. It just could be anything that you get, right? Like any additional money that you get after paying your bills, put it in there, right? Because many people think that just putting their money in a savings account, not even in a high yield account, it's going to just stay there and they're going to feel some sense of safety, that financial safety, like, okay, we're doing good and it's in the bank. But what you have to remember is that the bank is actually selling your money and making money out of your money. Right. So like if you think about it, you're kind of being robbed in a way. Because like they're using your hard work money that you sweat the fries at McDonald's for, or you did so much work for. They're gonna use it and sell it. So why don't you do the same? Why don't you go and going into now we were just talking about it. You have access to so many apps. You have access to so many different outlets of like high yield accounts. There's so many banks giving so much percentage for your money, or putting it into the stock market, into an ETF, which will give you 12%. And a lot of people don't believe in it because they see the stock market as a very crazy wealthy world, right? They think that it's so far away from what they are. And I think that you should never think that. I think that the stock market is for everybody. It's a publicly traded market. So like just how you go in, you buy your stock, you take it out, it's public. You're investing in public companies. So I think that it's for everybody, and you have to remember that, right? So investing in an ETF is definitely a good route instead of just putting your money in a savings account. That's number one. Uh, and I think Josh, we alluded to this also the other day, right? Like building a foundation is important. Foundation, when I think of the word foundation, I think of like building a house. You have like first you have to build a hard concrete like slab, or the bottom of the house has to be well built before you even start building up. If you're if you're not building a good foundation, then you're never going to be able to go up, or it's going to fall easily if the wind blows. So you have to be able to build a foundation. And I think when I think of foundation is have a high yield account, high yield savings account that's multiplying your money either 4%, 4.6, and then also start investing in the stock market and compounding some kind of capital. Once you compounded that capital, you kind of just can cut it in half and have something what I call let's go play money, right? And I think what I think of let's go play money, it sounds a little crazy for some people because people, people value money a lot, but I think that when I say let's go play money, it means like let's go take that risk or let's go invest and make more money out of this money. And when you go into that game, you start looking at rewards, and you're playing with money that you essentially just kind of cut in half, and you don't really need it per se. Like you're just kind of just sitting there. You're not making it work. It's not flowing. So just keeping that cash flow and then making it work for you is it's a currency. I think that I've heard some like top mentors online sometimes talking about currency is like the word, right? You have to keep it going. It has to flow. If you keep it in a place that getting dust, the bank's going to keep flowing it for you. That's just how it's going to go. So if you think about it that way, I think that you can definitely get something going if you build a strong foundation and have that extra capital. Many people ask, how do I start? I think that when you think of how do I start is start investing in yourself before you even take that play money risk or any of those the risk. And when you start investing in yourself is with that foundation you're building, start self-developing. Start, looking into the market hustle. There's so many good tools that you built, Josh, that can help people just to kind of start learning how to invest. Because like if you're gonna go in and play, you have to know what you're gonna play. Like if you're gonna go play basketball or you're gonna go play a new sport, you have to read about it or kind of just get trained on it. If not, you're gonna get burned by the guys there. You're just gonna walk away with your ball, brand new ball you bought at wherever you bought it, and you're gonna go home and be like, I suck at basketball.
You got to
Uh,
know how the game works. You got to know the
exactly,
rules of the game.
exactly, exactly. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I think that
Dude, I think it's spot on. And what I really like, Fernando, is first off, the best part about this podcast is we bring on people with different perspectives and maybe even, people who approach the markets in different ways. So like Fernando, like although he is more on the active trading or the active investor side of things, what I really like, Fernando, is how you're highlighting the importance of still building that foundation. Because like I think what I see, what I notice a lot of is where people get obsessed with the quick results in the trading side of things. And that's kind of what they zoom in on, and they want to just skip all of the basic foundational steps. And by doing that, they leave themselves vulnerable to the more riskier environment. Like, although there's more potential rewards, you just leave yourself more vulnerable. Like, you're playing the game on expert, hard mode or whatever you want to call it, when you don't necessarily have to if you set things up more intentionally from the very beginning. So I really like how you kind of highlight that part. And I really want to zoom in on that just a little more. Why don't you highlight some of the mistakes you see some of the active investors make from your perspective, and maybe also just give us some context around like how many years or roughly you've kind of been, using this strategy that you have.
yeah. So day trading, I think I started 3 years ago. I think that first I was just doing long term again to build a foundation. So I invested in the S&P 500. I invested in different conservative ETFs to get return. But also, I was always kind of eager to get an extra amount of money. And this is where I go back to sales. Um, and commission, if you sell something big, your real estate or anything like that, you get big lump sums of money out of nowhere. And then you're giving this and you're like, what do I do with it? Right. And that's again, putting it into the foundation, putting it into the building of the house. Because if you think of that, once you have enough in there, you can cut percentages in there and start using that money to day trade. But before going back a little bit before to your question on that, I think that I did long term first, then I went into options. And again, this is all decisions based on knowledge. I read books, I looked at podcasts, I mean, I went through your book too. Like there's different things. And for options, it's It's kind of like gambling if you think about it. Options is kind of like gambling. And I talked about it. I talked about it to a friend today, where he said he got burned by the market and he just stopped, trading. And I asked him, "What'd you do?" And he said options. And I was like, "That's why, because you have to really know what you're doing. Like options is one of the craziest trades you can do out there, and you have to be very, very savvy when it
Mhm.
comes to doing options.
Well,
So I did it. Go ahead.
I was going to say it. I think a lot of it is just like misunderstanding the risk part, like, risk management, right? Where you built that foundation, you built your stable, long investments. It's like you understand the risks a lot more because you've seen the ebbs and flows of the markets throughout the years. So like you have that insight, and like it's not like you're putting 100% your portfolio in these trades. Like you're just using a small percentage, and you're fully aware that you could potentially lose all of that, but you're also aware that there's a high potential chance of payoff if you make the right moves, the right educated, strategic risk moves compared to just blindly going at it and pulling the lever on the slot machine and hoping for the best.
Yeah, yeah, good
That's
point. Good point, Josh. I think, risk is important and leverage as well, right? Because at the end of the day, many people are taking on certain risk along with leverages that they don't really have the foundation or the bandwidth to handle whatever that may result in, And Fernando just shared a story about a buddy just kind of losing it quite a bit. And obviously the knowledge is great, absorbing information is important, but there's nothing like when you actually go to take action. So, and I know we're talking about, your trading experience a bit here. So, what are some of the things that you've learned about trading?
Yeah, I think that I lost a lot of money, and you have to be willing to lose money to gain money. But the losses that I made, I think there's a saying that if you lose 100%, you lose 50%, you have to make up 100% of that loss to even get back on your feet. And I think that it's not trial and error. It's just sometimes sometimes you can learn so much, but you have to do it. You have to fall. You have to hurt your knees. You have to kind of get hurt by the market a little bit, but be able to. It goes back to something I was going to mention when you were talking, Joshua. That do not like something you have to learn too is to be emotionally disattached from the market. You have to know that you can't attach yourself emotionally to these machines or these computers that are kind of giving you the line and just thinking of the stock market itself. Don't get emotionally attached to it, right? Because it will definitely ruin your day, ruin your week if you emotionally attach to it. And that goes back to the foundation, right? If you have a good foundation, I think you posted it before, where you put savings account this much, investment account 300,000, and then your your regular checkings account. Of course, you don't want to have that much in checkings account. What's the return on that? But you have enough to pay your bills on a checking account. Um, like it's not even that much, right? But if you think of that, the investment account always has a lot more, and also the savings. And that's right there, a good foundation. If you have something like you can call it a safety net, you can call it just a good feeling for you, that will help you manage your emotions better. But if you're running on low fuel and you're going in there hot 100 miles per hour, hot like hot rod in there, it's going to be bad because you're going to get emotionally hurt and you're going to be there at the little line where it's like, if I lose it all, what's it going to be for my family? What's it going to be for, my investments? How am I going to make it back? And that's the part where, like, if you don't have it, build that first, build your knowledge, and
Mhm.
then go in and play. Like, and I think that day trading is kind of like a game, right? You have this certain amount of capital that you're putting in and out of the market constantly, and you know the risk. I mean, you know the amount of tax you have to pay on that. You know the amount of loss you can easily take, but you have to know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, then you could potentially lose so much money in one day because you're kind of playing with fire at that point. But what makes me feel okay and sitting here okay, not thinking that I'm going to lose that much is knowledge, having a foundation, and also knowing that I know what I'm doing. Like, getting in there and out, I know exactly what I'm doing because I've done it for so long. So that goes to experience, right? That can be called experience. Kind of like you learn how to do something so well that it becomes nature, part of you. Um, so that's kind of like what I have there earlier on that.
Fernando, This is awesome. It's really nice to just have a different perspective on the podcast, and we're really zooming in on this. So I really appreciate you coming on, man. I'm also curious, like, how much would you say your sales experience and like just your resilience you've built up through sales has contributed to your investing skills? Like, do you see any correlation with the skills you've built up throughout your career working in tech sales and like how that's built up your, maybe you could call it the emotional maturity that you need to not get too caught up on the big dollar amounts and focused more on the actual tangible skills that lead to those results?
Yeah, I mean, for sales, I think that like comparing it a little bit to day trading, I think that in sales, you also have to emotionally be emotionally strong. You are going to be told no. You are going to have losses. You are going to lose deals that you probably counted on. Like you probably counted on these deals, and you went and got a bunch of like new stuff for the house. You did a redesign or something, and then you're like, oh, that deal did not go through. It can happen to real estate. It can happen in tech sales. It can happen in any kind of sales job, right? But you can't. That's why you can never emotionally attach to any deal, and that's the same concept for the stock market. You cannot emotionally attach to stock. You have to be able to diversify and kind of just figure out how to not like lose so much, but also just think of it as in I can make it back. I can always make it back because I know how to, and that's the part where like it's you have to like learn, of course, because if you know how to, then you can always make it back. So
Well,
whatever got you there in the first place, you can do it. It's kind of like sales, right? If you don't get that deal, you can always get another deal, and it can be bigger because you know what you're doing. You learned the sales, you know the company you work for. But again, that goes like, working for a company. Of course, like sometimes people think, well, financial freedom, you shouldn't be working. Financial freedom, you shouldn't be having a 9 to 5. Well, how I look at it is I'm still in my like a millennial, right? And I think that the company I work for, I learned so much, and also I get to socialize and I get to do something every day instead of just trading. But also, I wouldn't want to not do anything. There's so much you can do when you have so much time, right? You can invest in yourself, or you can go do sports, or you can kind of just meet new people, network, and that's kind of what I think of your question, Josh.
no, I love it, man. Thank you for that context. And also for a little bit more context for the audience. So Fernando has been helping, represent the market hustle in some incredible ways. And maybe you can share a little bit about this, but you were invited to the Robinhood Summit event, right, Fernando? And he reached out to me. He wanted to represent the market hustle there. So we were able to, show off the brand there, get some exposure to the market hustle brands. But maybe give us a little bit of context around that event because I know that was like more trader focused, and you even got to talk with
Yeah,
the CEO of Robinhood, Vlad himself, which is awesome. But
yeah.
yeah, maybe highlight a little bit of that.
I think that it was so random. I've been using Robinhood since I started trading. I used to trade with like E Trade and Thinkorswim, but I think they're great platforms. All right, you use it, go ahead. If you know what you're doing, if you know what you're doing, that's all I'm saying. Like if you use any of these platforms and you go into their pro level of trading, I got lost. I did not know crap about Thinkorswim. I looked at it and I was like, what is this? Like, do I just jump in and not know what I'm doing? But I think that Robinhood does a good job at simplifying trading and making it easier to access, just through your phone. I think I found myself sometime working more in my corporate job that I didn't have enough time to trade or go in and pick up the Thinkorswim and pop my laptop up and tell the guys who were in the room I'm trading. That's just not right, like in the middle of a meeting. So but you can always get on your phone and look at Robinhood and open your app and kind of just trade immediately. And I think they did a good job at simplifying trading for retail investors. um, but going back to how I got invited, it was random. I received an invite from Stephen Quirk, which is the COO, I believe, COO at Robinhood, and I think it was all due to the amount of trades I do a day. And it was a active trader summit, so I think that they looked at different portfolios and they saw how many trades, who does the most trades, and like I said, most people use Thinkorswim or use apps that are just pro level. Um, And I think that good for them. I think that if you have something built, if you could use those platforms for your benefits, like great. Like if you're getting results, awesome. But I used Robinhood, and I think that for I've used them for so long that they saw potential in like inviting me and seeing their new products. So that was exciting because I actually live in North Florida, so and it was in South Florida, Miami. So all I did was like drive down 3 hours. They included the hotel. They included everything, like food and everything. And it was a leap of faith because many people are going to be like, "Is this a scam or something?" They're gonna. That's what I thought first. Like I thought it was a scam. I was like, how is Robinhood inviting me to this? Like, what do they want from me? Or is it this a hack or something? Because I've worked for cybersecurity companies, and you're told never open an email, never open an email. But
Yeah.
I looked at it and it looked legit. So I was like, I'm gonna go out there and just learn. And immediately, Josh, I was like, this will be a great opportunity for I think what's missing there in Robinhood, right? And I think it's the learning part, because you can download the app, you can get in there, put $100, leave it, and that's it, right? But if you want to get active, you want to be an active trader and start seeing some like profits, you have to learn. And it goes back to foundation again, always foundation on learning. And I think that all of your books, all of your podcasts, your previous podcasts, they help build that foundational knowledge instead of just a capital or money foundation, or economic, you can call it, or financial foundation. But yeah, I went down there for 2 days. It was awesome. It was such like a small crowd. I think it was like 1,000 traders that were there, but they were from different parts of like essentially the U.S. Right? I met people from, I mean, California, Seattle, I mean, New York, and everybody. What was awesome is nobody knew anybody. So it was like kind of like, you ever seen those gamer conferences where all these guys just come up and game and beat each other? Well, it felt like
Yeah.
that because the conversations you were having, people were talking about their portfolios, how much they were moving per day, and it was insane. It was insane how much they move per day. And active traders, like how much you can make out of like being an active trader if you know what you're doing. But what I did see is that Robinhood wants to move in the direction of teaching that more to their investors and for them to be able to use the app. So I think they in this conference they launched a couple of new products, and one of them was Robinhood Legend, which is now available in your desktop. So you can pull up, and it looks like Thinkorswim, but way better because I mean, it's very like simplified in a way. And that's what I've been using now. Like I have also have like a computer that I built, like not built it, but like I have for like coding and all that, and that's how I built my bot for like AI. But I use their platform to trade for that. But essentially, that summit was awesome. It was 2 days in Miami, and one thing that happened was going back to what I told you when I called you. I was like, I think it's great if we get to talk to these C-level executives at Robinhood because they're going to be there. One of them was Steven Vlad, which is their CEO, and it said it in the invite, and that's just what I did, right? And that goes back to manifesting things in your mind. Like manifestation is it's crazy, right? There's books about it when it like law of attraction, but it all goes down to the same, right? Like you set your mind to it. If you see it, you move towards it. It's like when you're riding a bike, and I remember being a kid and learning how to ride it without hands. But if you keep you learn how to ride it without hands if you keep your like wherever your head is going is where the bike is gonna go. So like without hands, it's like, okay, so how do I, if you look to the side, you're gonna fall. So manifestation is like going straight to what you thought, that image that you had in your head. And that's exactly what we did. We met Stephen Quirk and other people from Robinhood. I met Vlad. I had a conversation about the market hustle with Vlad, CEO of Robinhood. And ideas were tossed around. Um, but I think it, there potentially there's going to be a day that we're going to have him here.
We're
I
getting him
can
on the
say
podcast. He's
we're
coming
getting
on
him on the
the
podcast. Yeah.
And we're kidnapping
We're
him.
Essentially,
manifesting.
yeah, we're manifesting that, and it's gonna happen. And there's also some other great things that we're working together to get on the podcast. Some very experienced people in other sectors. I think Josh, we talked about it before. Um, but yeah, I think it goes down to that. But like it was awesome that they invited me down to Miami. I learned so much. I met so many new people. Some people that do other types of trades. They do options. They own companies that, sell the knowledge. So definitely, they're definitely a good time, and they threw a good party. Yeah,
That's awesome, man. No, it sounds like such an incredible experience, especially just being able to have those conversations with people who are at those higher skill levels. Like just kind of putting
yeah,
yourself in that environment is such an incredible thing to be able to do. Incredible experience. And Fernando, what I really like here is just how we are highlighting some of the important parts of like of course there's advanced strategies, like there's so many different advanced routes you could go when it comes to investing, and it's easy for new people to get overwhelmed with them all, whether it's
yeah,
options trading, day trading, even just individual stock picking, like kind of swing trading. Even that is like a whole
yeah,
skill that you kind of have to learn. And I think what's important to kind of point out here, or what I really want to highlight, and what I hope people take away, is it's not like Fernando just like woke up one day and started day trading and that was that. Like no, like he's taken years of his life to build up the foundation in his career, the income stability through his career, and then as well as learning the foundations himself, like building up his long portfolio, building up capital like in his savings, like having like that emergency fund before he started to explore more of the advanced realms that potentially, of course, bring more profit. But it's to what I try to say, like the analogy I like to use, it's like everybody wants to skip, going to medical school and they just want to be a doctor tomorrow. It's like, well, you still got to learn how things work before you get to that advanced, expertise stage. And
exactly.
what's even more cool is like once you get that foundation set in stone, spending less than you're making, all the simple stuff people want to skip, building emergency funds, not having any crazy amounts of consumer debt, like not only are you going to be able to try the advanced investing strategies if you want to with more success and less vulnerability, but you can also try more of the hands-on business building side projects. Like if you want to start your own business or build some sort of or take some sort of career risk, it's a lot easier to do that stuff when you're not financially vulnerable or tied up into thousands of dollars of debt, or just not having that money management system in place where you're spending less than you're making. So I'm really happy that we've been able to have you on this podcast, Fernando, to share, the nuances that a lot of people forget about, on the more advanced strategies when it comes to what's available out there. Um, and Bafi, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but yeah, it's really, really something I just wanted to highlight for everybody
Yeah,
listening is that the foundation, like that's the key part. Like once you get that in set in stone, it's easier to take more of those strategic risks.
yeah,
Yeah, and I'm glad we're taking a moment to kind of, put a pin on that in a more heavier, meaningful way because, we live in a world where everything is overnight, Amazon Prime, you same day, you can get it in the same day. So, and then when you go online, you see all these activities and ads and, people trading from different countries at a rooftop, right, at a penthouse, and I just made X, Y, and Z. And so people forget that what you see online doesn't necessarily mean that such and such person acquired that just by randomly sitting down for 30 minutes, clicking a few buttons, buying and sells, and all of a sudden, he's made it. And Fernando here highlight that very, very well. And he keeps hammering the foundation, right? He did tell you guys that he's actively trading, but guess what? He keeps coming back to the foundation that's giving him the flexibility to be able to do that. And he told you himself, took him a long time. It's not going to happen overnight. Anything great, all skill sets that are important, think of it as like raising a child. That's how you want to approach your investing, right? Or you want to approach in the same way you would want to, pick your life partner to last that long journey. You're not going to pick your life partner just because they got great hair and forget all the other important, way more important attributes because we could all get old and go bald. I'm probably halfway bald by now. You know what I mean? So I'm really glad about the way you touch on the main keys, the main pieces that people need to take away. That if they do have that desire, if they want that opportunity to be able to take advantage of some of the advanced tools and skills, get the basic stuff right, get the foundation right, so then you can go ahead and enjoy some of the things you want to try out. And even if you do try it and fail at it, it's not the end of the world because you at least have a solid foundation,
yeah,
right? But if you have no foundation and then you just dump $1,000 in there, now you need that 1,000 to do so much magic that
exactly.
again, to your point, you're emotionally too connected to the money Now you're not trading from a skills and knowledge perspective. You're doing it from an emotion and dollar value point of view, and that's gonna do way more damage. So, I mean, Fernando, this is incredible. I mean, I think this is the first time I've talked to somebody who's actually talked to Vlad. So, I think we're kind of a big deal here, man.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. I think I'm not gonna lie. I had a couple drinks on me when I spoke to Lav to be that to keep it real, to keep it real. But I remember, I don't think he remembers as well. Is telling him like twice. I told him twice. I was like, "Let's get you on the podcast, man. Let's get you on the podcast." And I think that he is gonna join the podcast. We are gonna make it happen, um, and it's gonna be so much good insight as to what Robinhood wants to do. They're really now, as you can see, they're moving more. If you can see more of Robinhood around, they're becoming bigger and bigger. And Robinhood, honestly, the name itself says what they want to do. They want to take away all these customers from Morgan Stanley. They want to take customers away from Vanguard. They want to steal that from them and bring these retail investors that are losing money, paying commissions to all these other institutions,
Yeah.
and maybe even bleeding out from funds that they don't know how to work in those platforms, or even paying financial advisors.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that's a big game changer. Once Robinhood came about, I use it as well. And once they came on board, Josh, I don't know if you remember, but remember once they came on board and free commit, no cost, no nothing.
Yep.
Guess what? All the
Yep.
other big financial firms did, right? They all just eliminated
All
bunch
that,
a
exactly.
bunch of fees and all those type of features to kind of make it competitive. And so I'm glad that Robinhood is here. I'm glad that it simplified investing for many people that
Correct.
felt like it was unreachable. It's for the professionals. It is out of reach. It's too complicated, and they've simplified it in a way that many retail investors now get to see what's actually possible for them. And
Yeah.
speaking of the banks, man, majority of them actually just reported earnings this week, right? Wednesday we had J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, BlackRock, Citigroup. Today we saw Morgan Stanley, U.S. Bancorp, some of these guys, and they're making tons of money. And if you recall a little bit earlier in the podcast, Fernando told you that guess what the banks are doing? When you put your money in the bank, they are loaning your money out. They are investing your money. They're loaning out in mortgages, in car note, in credit card, in the stock market, in equities, right? And in bonds and all these other uh, securities and features that makes them money. Your money is making them money. These banks are making more money now than they've ever made, right? So just a quick, just something to think about, right? You want to kind of take on that model a little bit for yourself and benefit from it, right? So now when you put your money somewhere, put it to work, diversify it, right? And Fernando told you, check out some ETFs. Put that money to work for the long term because guess what? I mean, the banks make money off my money. I deserve to make money off my money as well.
Right.
So you can kind of approach it that way, take that model a little bit, but this is incredible stuff,
And
man.
to add to that, when you think of banks, you think you know what they're doing. You think like, oh my God, it's like a god. Like they know what they're doing. You think of a bank, they're massive and they know what they're doing with my money. Well, we've seen banks fail. We've seen
Yes.
banks fall. And that's the part where you should have a little bit of just think of that, of who you're giving your money to and how they're handling it. Because, you know, we saw some California banks fall like 2 years ago and they had to be picked up by the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is kind of doing their part too now in the interest rate side. But when you think of it, you have to stay, consistent. If you're going to get in this game, if you want to get in this game of investment, stay consistent. Start with a very conservative mindset as to, slowly but surely, I'm going to make this much capital. And then once you make that, right, divide a little chunk off of that. And if you want to get into active trading, learn it first. Like instead of just grabbing that 25% from whatever you made in the last 3 years compounding in an ETF, use that money, the 25% you take out, invest in yourself first, and then go active trade. And learning how to active trade isn't that hard. I mean, YouTube is free, and there's so many other things that are free in Google. But I think that one nugget I'm going to give here is that high frequency trading is moving really fast. Like It's becoming a thing now. And when like what Buffy said, right? You see these guys in Dubai sitting at the tower and saying, "I'm trading and I'm making this much." Well, they might be, but they're doing it because they did exactly what I'm saying. They built a foundation and they made more money out of their money. And they kept doing that over and over again until they compounded this massive $2 million portfolio. And now they can go do that, right? They can go do
Yeah.
all the things and just sit on top of whatever they said.
Yeah, and to be honest, they're also not telling you how much money they're losing either, right? Like nobody's
Exactly.
gonna come online and tell
Exactly.
you,
Yeah, that's a good
sit on the
point. That's
penthouse
a
and
good
tell you,
point.
hey, by the way, I just lost $70,000 today. No, nobody's gonna do that. So
You have to be willing to bleed a little. You have to be willing. Again, don't emotionally attach. These guys don't emotionally attach because they know they can make it back. Once you're sitting at a good amount of capital in the stock market and you diversify, always diversify because you have to cut your losses. Um, then you can go ahead and do that. And if you have losses, you know what to do again to get back up. And then you move into also learn on what you're investing on. Again, like the banks, right? Learn where you're putting your money and learn where you're investing on. If you're going to put it into a stock, well, but you better believe in it. You better think that that stock, you better know everything about that company before you put your money in there because you will be burned. And you think that you're a Hard Rock Hotel or wherever you're gambling, you're going to make this much. That's betting. Again, if you learn what you're investing on, then you're surely going to have some kind of return and you're going to see some good stuff coming.
The banks are not going to like this episode.
no, they're not. They're not.
But
Yeah.
I completely agree, Bad. And what I will say, like, even just taking the time, if you're going to go, even just buy an individual stock, like what happens when you actually do the research and you understand how they make money, you understand how their leadership team is making decisions, you understand the business environment that that company is operating in, is that when the stock market has one of its inevitable red days or sell-offs, you're not going to freak out because you already understand the depth that you understand that company deeply. You're not only investing in it just to get a quick profit. You're investing it because you actually want to own a piece of that company. So it's easier to deal with those red days or the market panic that inevitably is going to pop up when you actually understand what you're buying. If you're only investing because you want a quick profit, the minute things start to turn sideways, your whole investment thesis from the beginning is false. If everything's going red and you wanted to invest because you wanted a quick profit, you're going to panic sell, naturally. So,
Yeah.
a lot of the confidence comes from understanding what you're actually getting involved in and what you're buying. So I like
Yeah.
that you pointed that out,
Yeah,
Fernando.
just to add on to that, no, you're spot on, right? Because it's this, I don't think people, and I also want to make sure the audience gets a good picture of this because we're even just buying individual stocks for long-term hold, that alone has a certain level of commitment and consistency, right? You might know the business today, but you might not know what it is tomorrow, which means when tomorrow comes, you have to relearn the business and see where the needle have moved, what has changed in the company, what their priorities are, what type of
Yeah.
products or services they're leaning into. What is their financial resources like? Do they have enough? Do they not? Are they spending too much? I mean, we saw it with Meta, right? They spent so much money on Metaverse and then we didn't get nothing out of it, right? So it's a
One
huge
thing I want to
commitment. Go ahead.
add to that, I think that for the audience, right? Like if you're thinking like, okay, I have my app, like, what can I go buy today, right? I think that we watch a lot of TV, we watch a lot of social media. Try maybe giving more time towards learning about AI. Look into AI, look into what's moving, look into what not only NVIDIA. NVIDIA is a big, huge monster of AI, but there's so many other companies that move with NVIDIA at the same time. And I think that first, learn what AI is, maybe just a little bit high level. You don't have to be an expert. But then start looking into companies that are moving towards that and innovating towards AI. Because that's honestly where a lot of things are going towards, right? How to automate, how to make things
Yeah.
quicker. And AI is a big one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, man. I think there's a lot of opportunities that's going to be coming up in this next 3 to 5 years and beyond.
Yeah,
And so understand that one, you're going to have to be committed and consistent for the long term, and you got to do your research, right? buying a company just because of the name doesn't mean you're actually doing your due diligence. It doesn't mean you've actually done the work. And so if the stock goes up because you just bought the name, it doesn't mean you made the stock go up, right? And if it goes down, it doesn't mean you made it go down. So understand that the research process is quite extensive. It's actually not something you can do in 10, 15 minutes. And even when you do know what you're doing and how to research these companies, it takes time, right? We're talking about financial statements, quarterly reports, annual reports, you name it, because it doesn't matter how it looks on the outside or what the perception is. What's happening on the inside and the core of it, the fundamentals, is the most important thing you want to get a good knowledge of. You don't have to know everything. You just need to know the main pieces that's actually going to put the company in a position to be sustainable and profitable for the long term, and that they're taking advantage of opportunities. So just three, if you can grasp three big pillars about the company, its industry, and where it's kind of positioned within that, that saves you a ton of headache in the long run as well.
Well said, man. Well said. I feel like we've went through a lot of great information in just this little over an hour of a podcast, and I'm really excited for this one. I think it's such a unique angle in all of the 36 podcast episodes we'll have now. So Fernando, I can't thank you enough again for not only coming on this podcast, but also everything you're helping with on the back ends. Helping with the building the relationships with Robinhood and with our mission of getting Vlad on the podcast in 2025. So I appreciate all of that as well, man.
Yeah, I hope he listens to this podcast.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me
man,
too.
we want to have you here. Like, I think it'll be a good conversation. He is a good guy. Awesome, like CEO. Definitely taking Robinhood to in the right direction. And he's super young too, I believe. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I've seen firsthand like how much Robinhood has empowered people with the tools to invest. And of course, the market hustle, like our mission is more of trying to empower people with the right perspective or information. So I'm really excited to see if we can get Vlad on the podcast just so he can share more of his vision. Because I think a lot of people misunderstand Robinhood, especially since they're kind of like the new guys on the block. There's a lot of some of the big players don't necessarily like them, or maybe they kind of throw out some bad press occasionally. But it would be cool to get him on the podcast just to be able to ask him some questions and understand his vision more for the platform itself over the next 10, 15, 20 years. But other than that, Fernando, is there any like closing comment that you want to give the audience before we officially wrap things up?
Uh, no, I think that like read the Compound Effect if you haven't read that book. Look into all of the information that Josh is creating. He's successful in creating all this learning information in the stock market. Um, and again, foundation and knowledge is what's going to get you to, doing these things correctly. Don't try to go into it not knowing because you are going to get burned by the stock market. Because there's a lot of people that don't want you to win in the stock market. There's hedge funds and there's other things that bring the stock down. So learn all these things first and then get into the game. But yeah, I think in the long term, you'll learn it little by little by just doing the right things and building a foundation in knowledge and in financial.
Well said, man. I love it. I love it. Bafi, how about you, my friend? Any closing comments on your end?
Absolutely nothing to actually add. I just want to say, Fernando, thank you for your time. This was incredible. I mean, I learned a ton, right? Not just about you and everything else you have going on, but just, the knowledge, the wealth of information, and the fact that you're here to share it, not just with us, but everybody else. That's amazing. That's part of the mission, and that's why we're here. So really excited. I was in Florida not too long ago, so maybe next time if I do come down to Florida, I'll definitely give you a shout and then
For
see what's
sure.
going on down there. But yeah, glad to have you here.
Perfectly said, man. Market Hustle community, that's a wrap for episode 36. I really hope you enjoyed this special one and definitely go re listen to it because we covered quite a bit here. Lots of gems were left by Fernando. I can't thank him enough for joining. And Bafi, of course, thank you for coming on as the co host. Pierce should be back for our next episode. Other than that, it's been an incredible evening. I'm gonna enjoy the rest of my time here in Arizona, sunny Arizona. Gonna soak up the sun a little bit more while it's freezing in Washington. But if you have a few minutes, do me a quick favor. whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Just leave us a quick 5-star review and a comment. It really goes a long way in helping build out this community. It pushes the podcast out in the podcast algorithm. So do that if you have a couple of minutes. And looks like Bafi has one quick comment.
Yep. Hey, tomorrow is Friday, which means for many of you out there, it is payday. And you know what that means? You have to pay yourself first, whether it's through your regular savings, your 401k contribution, or taxable brokerage account. Just a friendly reminder to make sure you pay yourself first because you put in all that work. Enjoy your weekend.
I couldn't have ended it any better. So that's a great comment, Bafi.
That was awesome.
Anyways, Market Hustle community, you all have a great rest of your nights. And if you're new to the podcast, we got 35 other podcast episodes. So take some time to listen to those. Have a great rest of your nights. Bye-bye.
If you feel just like I do, link up, come and join this crew. Hey, I'ma go invest and I'ma watch my money double. Take it to another level with that market hustle. Hey, always play it smart, you ain't dealing with a sucker. Take it to another level with that market hustle. I'ma hustle, hustle 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 with that market hustle. Go.